Hello all. You may have noticed the term anarcho-tyranny has gained some traction in recent weeks and months, and that's because it sums up the situation in modern Western liberal states such as Britain. The term refers to a tyranny where the state essentially watches your every movement and will come down on you like a ton of bricks if you make one wrong move, while on the street level it's increasingly anarchic, dangerous and seemingly without rule. I dare say this sounds familiar. It's very much the working model of Keir Starmer's government as well as our police at the moment. They seem to revel in pushing around the average law-abiding person, enjoying flexing their muscles and showing how tough they are, but when there's actual problems on the streets, they're basically ignored. The latest farcical chapter of this bizarre time we're living through revolves around a Hadush Kibatu. He was a, quote, asylum seeker who came over on one of these boats, assaulted a child, which led to the Epping protests. Far right, don't you know? They're the real problem. And when the police arrested him for assaulting a child, they somehow let him go, by accident. Now we have a, quote, manhunt for him. Quite how the system can lose such a person is, well, beggars belief, and we all know that Lucy Conley or Peter Lynch wouldn't go missing. No, it's off to jail with them, and hopefully they'll kill themselves. One less problem for the system. I know it's strong language, but I've come to the conclusion that we're ruled by people who pretty much despise us. We're an irritant to the multicultural utopia that they envision. It's why they propagandize against us, they commit themselves to all forms of lawfare, and they just can't accept that their multicultural utopia isn't exactly working out. And this explains why, when we finally have a serious inquiry into the grooming gangs, we can finally discover what's happened, the scale of this tragedy. Well, it's already falling apart at the seams because they're trying to fix it from the inside. We have to remember that Jess Phillips is a moral, better person than me and you, and she has every right to try and cover her own and the Labour Party's and the police's tracks with regard to the obvious religious and racial motive to these crimes. But look, it's a new inquiry, but the same old liberal regime which dictates that, quote, minority groups may not be shown up for their awful behaviour. You have to adhere to the idealistic liberal version of reality rather than reality itself. This is why when it comes to Diwali, we have Indian Hindus firing fireworks out of their cars in what looks like rocket launchers, and the police are nowhere to be seen. To be fair, even if there were good police, they probably won't want to do anything because they'll be called racist if they stop this sort of behaviour. On that note, you may have noticed the BBC are on a major offensive at the moment trying to paint the police as misogynistic and racist. My guess is they don't like the grooming gangs news dominating the headlines, and in their minds they're trying to equalise the playing field by, whitey is evil rhetoric. The BBC also did this investigation into the Met Police where they found one guy was being a bit bawdy about women, and one of these guys called lots of the immigrants he has to deal with scum. And okay, I don't condone the language, it was a bit ugly and all of that, but these guys are doing very difficult jobs and dealing with very difficult people, and if you try and undermine them, you're just going to replace them with Guardianistas and company men, and things will get a lot worse fast. I think at this time of chaos where we're seeing increasingly dangerous and violent situations across the Western world, most notably poor old Ukrainian refugee Irina Zarutska, who was stabbed in the neck while minding her own business on public transport by a feral black guy. Now apparently he was, quote, mentally ill. Of course the mainstream media don't want you to know that he said, "I got that white bitch," after stabbing her in the throat. Irina Zarutska was left to die, terrified, confused and alone in a pool of her own blood. And we're supposed to think this is what? Part and parcel of living in a big city? And this is why many of us don't appreciate erratic behaviour on public transport at the moment. It's rude in principle, but given current events, people are especially wary. Although, of course, we're just stupid, evil bigots for thinking this way.
That's outside, you get me? That's outside. That's way to entertain, you get me? I got money in the bag, take you home with me. Hey, I got money in the bag.
Now, shouting and scaring strangers on public transport is of course awful behaviour, but doing it to a woman is just low down behaviour. We all know this guy needs a good decking, but if you were to do that, he and his friends might stab you or stamp on your head. Not to mention you'd probably be arrested for some racist attack or whatever. You can picture the BBC and Guardian headlines now, can't you? Innocent engineer, architect, musician Bunny attacked by evil white supremacists on London Underground. This must stop. Now, while we're on the topic of the London Underground, apparently in recent weeks and months there's been a spate of sexual assaults. Now, we all know how diverse London is and how that's our strength, but we also know how the powers that be see this problem and who's responsible. Sorry, I had to take the audio off this clip because YouTube will take the video down. But as you can see, the perpetrator here is a white guy sexually assaulting a black woman. Because we all know that's the problem. I mean, every time you're on the underground, those bloody white men assaulting black women. But as I say, this sort of thing is just a feature of the liberal regime. White Western male is always bad and minority is always good. It's why our friends even in Australia have to deal with this. This is an advert in New South Wales. As you can see, same dynamic. White man, black woman, sexual assault. Can anybody find one instance of this happening in Australia? But again, this is part of the liberal utopia where our rulers describe reality as they think it should be rather than it is, and we have to pretend it's not a dystopia where people who deliver food now have to wear a camera on their jackets, so I guess straight white men don't attack them. And if you weren't sick and tired enough already of the increasing violence on the streets, the chaos, the sexual assaults due to the mass diversity program of the liberal regime, you can have multimillionaires descend down upon you from their all-white enclaves to lecture you about your dehumanizing language when you say you're sick of mass immigration.
I just don't know when we started dehumanizing people to the extent that we do.
Yeah, there's that suspicious question time miraculous applause you get for any tawdry leftist liberal cliche. Now, I'm not going to play the clip in full because we've all seen this a million times before. It's Mariella Frostra, by the way. She's some Guardianista who promotes mass immigration and illegal immigration. Her point is we should be thankful that people want to come here, although of course she doesn't live with the diversity she promotes so joyously. In fact, she lives in the Shire, in the middle of Somerset, in a mansion surrounded by fields. Although that is when she's not holidaying with other unbearable Hollywood millionaire liberals like George Clooney. But while these people lecture us from their literal and metaphorical ivory towers, we have to deal with the reality on the ground. Recently we had the story of a Deng Chol Majek, a Sudanese, quote, asylum seeker who came and stayed in a hotel here and murdered one of the workers there. And these also wonderful liberals that lecture us for our dehumanizing language really never answer the question, how many women, how many children is it worth to have murdered, to have sexually assaulted, to fulfill your liberal dream? At this point, you can't deny that your immigration policy is going to lead to these things. So how many is too many for you? Of course, they'll never answer that. They'll just call you racist if you question them. The correct answer, by the way, is one is too many. This whole policy is completely insane, but these people don't have to deal with the reality. They lecture us from their enclaves, well away from the diversity that they endorse, and just want a good old pat on the back from their Guardianista and BBC friends. But again, we're not alone in this madness. The liberal regime's tentacles reach across the Western world. This is a story from Sweden recently. An Eritrean migrant entered the country illegally, raped a 16-year-old, ruining her life, and apparently they're not going to deport him because the rape wasn't long enough. Now, somebody tagged me into that story on Twitter, and I had to do a double take because a lot of these stories you think, this just can't be real. And then you look it up, and they're real. This is actually happening. And it's like the system expects us just to turn a blind eye, to just think this is just part of life. And while all of this madness is going on, while our Labour Party are a bit of a joke in government at the moment, they're actually very alarming with how they behave, because people are extremely worried about their children, about the state of their country, but they don't care. We have to understand this. They're going to plough on regardless, which is why they're pushing digital ID when nobody has asked for it and nobody wants it, but you're going to get it. And this is a perfect example of anarcho-tyranny. Your movements will be tracked meticulously. You make one wrong move and you'll pay heavily for it. Meanwhile, illegal immigration will keep going on, mass immigration will keep going on, and the liberal regime will keep propagandizing with regards to the true state of the nation. Now, we all know that digital ID is nothing more than a power play from the liberal regime because they're losing control. It's essentially a social credit system to ensure you have a progressive worldview, and if you don't, you'll be banned from essential services. And that means most of us are in trouble because it's not very difficult to be labelled far-right and Nazi in this day and age. As this guy points out on Twitter, to be labelled a Nazi, you just have to be pro-white countries, being able to have borders, to be pro-Europeans, having families, to reject sexual perversions, to be pro-meritocracy, and to have respect for your ancestors. Clearly, we're on the verge of a mass crackdown and mass censorship, and I do wonder if it will even work. William Colston, leader of the SDP, but this interesting quote by Thomas Hobbes: "A man has no duty to a sovereign who lacks the power to protect him." And I do wonder how much longer or how much further the social contract between the rulers and the ruled can be stretched before it snaps. Anyway, do let me know what you think down below. Do consider subscribing to the channel if you're new.